Hey folks, Ariel over here at Nyth, where it's been frosting, as you've probably been aware. We're getting still some nice days, highs in the 50s or even into the 60s, you know, in the afternoon. But as you can probably see behind me, most of the garden beds have been covered, except for the stuff that is entirely done. This bed has onions and mostly beets on that side, onions on this side. What I'm doing now is harvesting the rest of the onions. Now, I've been using onions and eating them for most of the summer. So I've already gone through quite a bit. I had another patch over at that end of the garden and I've pretty much used all of them up. So I'm just pulling these out. Onions grow partially above ground, partially below, as you can probably see here. If you have really hard soil, you may want to loosen it up with a fork. My dirt's pretty soft, so it works pretty well. Check out the size of that guy. I do have the biggest onions I have ever grown here this year, and I don't know if that was due to the weather, to the new garden beds, to what this year, but I would say most other years I haven't really got onions. Check out the root on that thing. You know, this has been about the biggest most of my onions got, and I actually have quite a few this year that are more like this size. Isn't that cool? So what I'm doing here is just pulling them up gently, shaking the dirt off, and much like we did with the garlic, we're going to let these cure a little bit because I want these to last me hopefully most of the way through the winter. I don't know that I have quite enough to get me all the way through the winter, but we're going to see how long I can have my own onions anyway. These are yellow onions. Different kinds of onions do store better than others. I usually grow a few white ones and a few purple ones because I like the variety, but I eat those first. Those were all in my other patch that I started eating earliest because they just don't store very well. These are yellow onions. There's quite a few varieties of all the colors, but in general, yellow onions do store quite well. So I'm just going to pull them all up. I'm putting them in this is actually a really cool tray. I got one year when I bought some cases of tomatoes and they were sold in that, and I asked the produce fellow if he needed them back and he said no, they didn't. And I thought about getting more cases just to have more of those very nice trays to haul things around in the garden. But I'm just going to continue gently. I'm not scrubbing them really. A lot of that dirt will crumble off as it dries up. The soil's somewhat moist, as you can probably see. I'm just going to lay them in here carefully, and then we'll cure them. There's another record big one. So I'm just going to pull all of these out here now. How to tell when they're ready to pull out? I figure when about half of them have fallen over. Like, see how these have all laid down? This one's still standing up and that one is, but most of them have laid down. Some people even will bend them over to get them to start forcing their growth into the bulb more. My summers are so short, I don't really need to do that. My main concern is more getting them out of the ground before it starts to freeze the dirt solid. So this is the perfect time of year to be harvesting them. And I'm just going to pull them all out here and then show you what I'm doing next. So I just moved over here to the shade to be more pleasant to work. What I'm going to do now is clean these up just a little bit. There seems to be some debate about this. Some people say leave all the leaves on until the plant dries up more. Some researchers have tested this, and it seems like the onions really don't care one way or the other. So again, just like garlic or potatoes or anything else for preserving, I want to be very gentle with this just to make them easier to handle. I like to whack off the top long bits of leaves, kind of like that. I'm going to trim them down lower later once they're cured, kind of like I did with the garlic, but for now it just makes them easier to handle without hanging up on each other and all that kind of thing. So I'm just going to go through and whack these off. And then onions like to cure for a while. Right now the outside of these is very, very tender. It's very soft. And you probably want to handle them a little bit like eggs, because I don't want to bruise that, because I want them to be able to keep all year, or at least all winter. So I want to be very gentle. We want that outside to toughen up and get to be more like an onion you're probably used to buying in the grocery store, where the outside, you know, papery layers are all pretty hard and, you know, papery feeling. Right now, these don't really feel like that. They're very, very soft. And I do have a few little ones that for whatever reason just didn't really decide to grow like their neighbors, but most of this harvest is really, really good. So I'm just trimming them up here, and then I'm going to let them just lay here and dry for a little bit, like most of the rest of today. 2 or 3 days would be fine. Some people just leave them lay out in their garden. I'm going to bring mine in by tonight because I'm pretty sure it's going to freeze again tonight. And while for the last few weeks they've been protected from the freezing by still being in the ground, and I had the frost cover over the bed and all of that, now that they're out here and exposed, I don't want them to freeze, because then they would thaw out and go mushy, and we don't want that. They would not keep then, so, unless they stayed frozen. So I'm just going to let them lay out here. This is kind of filtered sunlight. Some people say full sun, some people say in the shade and no sun. This filtered sunlight's going to be my in-between version. They're just going to lay here in the grass for the rest of the day and kind of dry up a little bit. Some of that dirt will fall off, the roots will start to shrink, and then I'm going to move them to a actually warmer and drier area to cool, or to cure. Again, that's Burley's I'm Not an Elk bandana. He's not much of a clothes-wearing dog, but sometimes at this time of year he needs to, because it is hunting season. Anyway, so after, you know, late this evening, before it starts getting really cold, I'm going to layer them all back carefully, probably some into this tray and some into a cardboard box, just because I don't have enough trays. And I'm actually going to, you could bring them into the house or a garage, anywhere from like 60 to 80 degrees in Fahrenheit in temperature, and dry is a good place to cure them. I have a friend who cures hers by spreading them out in inside their greenhouse in the full sun, and so on. So there's definitely some options there, but you want somewhere pretty warm for a couple weeks. I could take them in my house, but they would take up half of my house, so I'm actually going to take them over to the neighbor's one shop. They've got some extra room, and I can occasionally use a corner there for doing things like this. So that will stay above freezing, even though it's not going to be 80 degrees. It's just something that's hard to pull off around here. I may actually bring them in the house and just spread them on the floor for a night or two with the wood stove going. Then I could get it to 80 degrees, because I just want all these outside layers, like I said, to dry up and kind of seal up their onion inside, because the onion will wait for next spring and just start regrowing, pushing new growth out of that same bulb and make an onion flower and make little onion seeds and start all over. And just in case someone's going to ask, these were started from seeds. I didn't start the seeds here just because of my lack of space, but I brought them from a local greenhouse. It's little grassy looking onion starts, and that's what these were grown from. I've always found that the actual starting from seeds, or sets, that would be called a set once somebody else has started the seeds for you, seems to produce better and bigger onions than if you start from the little things that look like mini onion bulbs. They're in their second year, they're a little more prone to going to seed. There's just various differences there. You can certainly grow onions from either thing, but I've had better luck with the seeds or the little seedling plants. producing me some pretty good onions. So that's my harvest here. I did weigh this whole container. I have about 40 pounds of onions here, which is pretty good. That doesn't, of course, count any of the ones I've been eating for months and months, and I still actually have some baby ones in the garden that I started from seed myself, and most of them are probably not any bigger than this right now, so I'm just going to leave them in there and continue to use them fresh as long as I can pull them out of the ground until it starts freezing, and keep this batch for my storage one. So 40 pounds of onions. I like them almost as well as I like garlic. Should get me through a bunch of the winter. And again, I'm just being very gentle as I lay these down here. The grass is pretty soft because I don't want to bruise them until those outsides kind of harden up a little bit. So the steps after this, just to reiterate, are they're going to lay here for me for just a day to dry up a little bit in the filtered sunshine. Then I'm going to put them inside a shop, just in a box or something like this crate where the air can still move around. You get airflow, not like tied up in a plastic bag. And then they're going to stay there for 3 or 4 weeks to continue curing. Then they can stay somewhere cooler, like a root cellar if you have it, or a basement, or a cold garage, or somewhere like that. So that's my onion harvesting for the year and my 40 pounds of onions that I hope to be eating till next spring. Hi folks, Ariel over here. Thanks for spending some of your valuable time watching these videos. Hopefully you found something beautiful, educational, interesting, peaceful, relaxing, or useful while you were here. If so, find more videos here, subscribe so you don't miss any updates, and if you like what you found here, feel free to like and share away so that others can benefit as well. You all have a wonderful day.